Now, maybe you're here this morning and you need energy. I need energy. It's been one of those weeks where I've just felt like I want to run away. And many of you know that I had the chance to go to Hawaii a few years ago and stay at basically the greatest place that ever has lived. Friends of mine actually went there for their honeymoon. I don't know why they came home. I don't know why I came home. We should have just stayed there and claimed refugee status. Okay, I don't know why refugees are coming to Ottawa. It's still snowing in April. I'd be going to Hawaii. I don't know why all of America doesn't live in Hawaii. If I was American, I'd be in Hawaii. I love you guys, but I'd be gone. And it's been one of those weeks with the weather and just stuff going on at home and at work and everything else. And then you throw in what happened last Monday, beautiful day, and what happened in Toronto. And enough. I want to run away. And I don't know about you, but we go through these seasons and we either do fight or flight. My instinct when I fight and it doesn't seem to help is flight. I just want to run away. And it looks in different ways, right? For me, it's run away to Netflix or run away to hide under my pillow, run away in I don't want to talk about it. Whatever it is, when crap hits the fan, we just feel like running away. We're continuing our series in 1 Samuel, and if you're not familiar with 1 Samuel, it's an ancient book that was written originally in Hebrew, and it was written to chronicle the early history of the nation of Israel, God's people. It was written about 3,000 years ago. And it was written in the ancient Near East, and as we'll see even today, there's customs that come out that seem so foreign to the way we live our lives today. But in its very core, it might have been written 3 days ago. Because the human issues that are exposed and that are dealt with are the same. They're the same today. Oh, the context might be a little bit different and everything else, but the human heart and the relationships and the questions before God and all of that is as old as time and as new as now. And so Samuel's writing to not just chronicle the early history, but to reveal God in history. Because just like how humanity hasn't really changed over all of these years when it comes to our hearts and our relationships with one another and our insecurities and everything else, God hasn't changed. And that's what's so cool about the Bible is that we can look at something that was written 3,000 years ago on the other side of the planet in a different language, a different culture, and all of that, and it can still speak to us today. And so if you got your Bibles, you could turn to 1 Samuel. We're continuing, and the reality is David is on the run. He's running away. Life is not fair. If you've been tracking for a while, you know anything about the story of David. David was minding his own business, shepherding his parents' flock, having fun with the slingshot. He was pretty good at playing the lyre or the harp, and he gets introduced to a prophet named Samuel who says, "You're going to be king." Problem with that is that Israel already had a king, but he wasn't a very good king. As we'll see today, he was actually quite a horrible king, a guy named Saul. And David rises to stardom because he ends up having to fight an enemy of the nation of Israel and a representative of that enemy named Goliath. And this little boy kills this massive man, and Israel wins, and they start writing folk songs about David. He's a rock star. He's a hero. And Saul gets jealous. And Saul tries to kill him. And David loses his wife, and he loses his best friend, who just happens to be Saul's son. And David, where we pick it up today, is on the run. Life's not fair. He's losing everything. And we take for granted at times that David was old enough to fight. Yes, he was, but he was still young. Can you imagine? He's probably in his mid-20s losing everything and knowing that the most powerful man in the nation wants you dead. And so David's running. But as we'll see, and I'll just tip my hand up front to you guys, when everything is an unholy mess, when everything around us just seems to be not what God would want, maybe you're there right now, and all we want to do is run. The text we're going to look at today says, run to the Holy One. When everything is unholy, when everything is unraveling, when everything is disastrous and destructive and death and all of that, when it is unholy, there's nothing good about it. Run to the Holy One. So 1 Samuel, here we go. We're going to pick it up. David, like I said, is on the run, and he actually does run to the priests. He runs to the representatives of Yahweh, and we'll pick it up in chapter 21. And he comes to this place called, I wanted to do a vote, because I told Pastor Tim this week that it's Nob, the town of Nob. It's great, eh? Or is it Nob? Nob? Nob. Okay, I want to do a scientific survey. Nob? Nob. Yeah, we're going with Nob this morning. All right. Let's try to keep it serious, though, okay? It's a serious story. Poor folks in Nob. All right. So David's on the run, okay? He's leaving. He's all alone. He's on the run. And verse 1 of chapter 21 says, David came to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. Okay, so he runs straight to the church, so to speak. He runs to the Holy One. And Ahimelech came to meet David trembling. Okay, so he's freaking out. David shows up alone. Now, David is a rock star. David is the most powerful, mighty warrior in the nation. He's part of the king's court. He's married to the king's daughter. And here he is running. And the priest is freaking out, going, "Why are you alone and no one's with you?" And David said to the priest, "The king has charged me with a matter and said to me, 'Let no one know anything of the matter which I sent you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here.'" So David's lying, right? He shows up alone, and the priest's like, "What are you doing here alone?" David never would have traveled alone. He would have had men with him and everything else, and there would have been an entourage, but he shows up all alone, and the first thing he asks for is food. He's starving. Now, where he is, Nob is like an hour and a half, so to speak, from where he was, and he's come here, and he's hungry. He's hungry. He's come to the priest, and he wants some food. And he says, "The king has charged me to come and do this." There's only one thing Saul wants for David, and that is his head. And the priest then says, "You know what? We don't actually have any bread. All we got is the bread of the presence, which you can't have." Now, you're like, "What?" Okay, so the bread of the presence was something that the Israelite people were told to have and to keep. And they had 12 loaves, and they were to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And it was bread because it was meant to represent God's provision for the people of Israel, that he sustains them, that he feeds them, right? Jesus even references this in the New Testament where he says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by the very word of God." And he says, "I'm the bread of life." Okay, so in the Old Testament, you get this picture, and the thing is that special bread, when it was starting to go, and they made new bread to replace it, the old bread couldn't just be thrown out. It had to be eaten, but it had to be eaten only by the priests, the holy ones, because it was holy bread. Literally, in Hebrew, what David's saying here is can I have some of the bread? Now, he's not referring to the 12 loaves. He's referring to just bread that they would have had, profane bread or unholy bread, just regular bread. okay? Wonder bread. All right? And the priest is going, we don't have any wonder bread. All we've got is this special bread that's just for the priests. Now, you got a hungry man on the run, and he asks for bread. The thing about the Old Testament law is that while it was a law, the priests had the ability to rank those rules, and taking care and sustaining life trumped ritual. And so the priest says, okay, you can have some of that, but only if you and your men are holy. And what he means by that is are you set apart? Now, David doesn't have any men right now. It's just him. And so he goes, yeah, but me and my men, the former soldiers that I ran, we even when we're on mission and it's not a holy mission, we keep ourselves holy. In David's mind, anytime he went to battle for God, and he went as if it was a holy battle. And so for them, what that meant was keeping themselves from sexual relations. So you got a whole bunch of really angry, pent-up guys going out and killing people, right? And so David goes, no, we're good. And so the priest feeds him these holy loaves. See, when we're on the run and everything around us seems unholy, when we run to the Holy One, we find that he's still the provider. He's still the provider. God is providing for him, and it's interesting that he uses the actual symbols of providing for the nation, even during this dark time, to remind David that he's providing for him. And so David eats and is sustained. He thanks the priest and Nob, and he continues on. But he asks for weapons before he goes. And it's interesting because for whatever reason, Goliath's sword, which if you recall from the story of Goliath, David, after he hits Saul in the head with the stone, picks up Goliath's giant sword and cuts off his head. Okay? Now, this sword at some point must have been presented as this fancy gift, so to speak, or memorial gift. And so the priest kept it in safekeeping. And so the priest gives David, he goes, the only weapon I got, we're priests, is I've got this sword that you used to kill Goliath. And so he gives him this sword. And again, we see this picture of, it's almost like God is reminding David in the midst of him on the run and Saul wants to kill him, right in the middle of all of this going on, God is saying to David, remember, I still am with you. I am still providing for you. So much so that here's the special bread for you, which reminds you that I'm still with my people. And more than that, the most pivotal, crazy time of your life so far, standing in front of a giant at war. And I provided for you, and I protected you, and I killed this giant. And here's the reminder, here's the sword. So there's times in life when everything just seems unholy, and when we run to the Holy One, we can be reminded, we can reflect on the fact that he is still provider, he is still protector. I don't know about you, but I have a really short memory. Every time a new problem comes up in my life, my initial reaction is to freak out like it's the very first problem I've ever experienced. You're like, oh my goodness, what kind of pastor is this? Ever do that? You know, I had a really dark time in my life. I was at university. Ruth and I had been married for 2 years, and I went through this depression, to be quite honest. I'd find myself crying in the shower for no reason. I was acing school, had this beautiful new wife. We had a nice apartment. I had like a cool black sports car. I was the envy of everybody, at least in my head. And yet I was just broken on the inside. And every day I would call my mom. I would remember because I'd be curled up like a cat in the sun that was shining through our windows. I'd be curled up on the floor talking to my mom. She made me call her every day. And she'd be like, what are we thankful for? And she'd make me actually list out the things that I was thankful for. Now, did it solve all of my problems? No, but it lifted me up to this place where it was like, God is still provider. And it's almost like God is doing this with David. He's saying, look, I've been there and I'm still here. I'm providing with you. I know you feel completely and utterly alone, but I'm here and I'm with you and I have been with you. Trust me in this. It's ironic, right? Because even this week, I'm texting my mom going, not a great week. And it's like those initial feelings of everything is unholy. Where is God now? And this reminder, he is still there. And can I just say, whatever you're going through today, he is still there. And sometimes we just need to take a minute and just look around, reflect on his provision and protection in our lives. And so David takes Goliath's sword and he goes on, and the text says that he ends up going to Gath. Now, just to reflect, I don't know why David goes to Gath. It doesn't seem like the best thing to do. Here's why. Gath is Goliath's hometown. So you kill it. This would be tantamount to the Leafs beating Boston. I know they didn't, but if they did, and wearing a Leafs jersey and going to downtown Boston and trumpeting that you won. Now, I've never been to Boston, but most major U.S. cities, you don't do the opposite. You don't do the other team, right? Like Philly apparently is even worse than Boston. Like you just don't do this. So you can imagine David's the rock star of the other team, and he's going with the sword that he killed their hero with, and he's going right into the hometown with the sword on his shoulder. Now, the people, you notice, of the reason why he goes there is he's looking for protection. He's looking for protection. Now, why on earth would he go to Goliath's hometown, considering all of the bad blood between these two nations? And so he's gone to Philistine. Why would he go there? Well, you know that old saying, you know, an enemy an enemy of my enemy is my friend? David's banking that the king of Gath is going to be on his side because the king of Gath might hate David, but he hates Saul more. And he shows up in the court, and the people in this court actually think that David is the king. You notice that in verse 11 of chapter 21? So Ashish, the king of Gath, he shows up and he says, the servants of Ashish, the king of Gath, and the servants of Ashish said to him, is not this David the king of the land? And look at this. Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. I love this. He's like, hey, you know my song. But it wears off on David pretty quick because David all of a sudden realizes, they actually think that I'm the king of the Israelites, and more than that, like I'm this big hero. And it literally in Hebrew says that he wanted to change their perception in his minds. So David all of a sudden starts acting like he's nuts. It says that he started like doing graffiti on the gate walls, and he let spittle grow in his beard. Okay, beards were a big deal back then. They were all hipsters. You took care of your beard. It was a sign of your manliness. You had a bone brush and nice oils. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But the point was you took care of your beard. And one of the first signs that you weren't right upstairs is if you didn't take care of your beard. There's some of you in here need to take better care of your beards. Okay? So David's got all this spittle and stuff in his beard, and the king goes, this guy's crazy. Why are you bringing him to me? Look at this, verse 14. And then Ashish said to his servants, behold, you see the man is mad. Why then have you brought him to me? Now, this is funny. He goes, do I lack madmen? That you brought this fellow to behave as a madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? He's like, I got enough crazy people around. I don't need you bringing me another one. King of Gath is having a bad time. Okay, he's lost his giant. His guys know the song. No one's writing a song about Ashish. So David's like, I gotta leave. This isn't good. And so he takes off and he goes and hides in a cave. And then word gets out. So God is continuing to protect and provide for David. Word gets out that David's hiding in this cave. And all of the people who are kind of marginalized in society start to come to David and form this army. It says 400 men show up. And they're the destitute, they're the desolate, they're the disenfranchised. You almost think of it as like a cross between Peter Pan and the Lost Boys and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, minus the tights. And they're coming together, and David's army is being built up. These people are coming. God is providing and protecting and surrounding him. It's a really cool story. You know, what's interesting, though, is that during this dark period, David's hiding in a cave, and he's being surrounded by a bunch of misfits that are going to become his mighty men. He's still hiding in a cave. You know, I wonder if at times he's thinking, you know, God said I was going to be king. And here I am with this ragtag group of people that nobody else wants in a cave. I had to pretend that I was nuts to save my life. I'm eating the bread, you know, from the priests, and I don't have a home, nothing. And in the midst of all of this, he actually wrote some Psalms. And it's neat because you get to see, and we'll look at them in a few minutes. But David reflected on what was going on. And in those moments, he still acknowledges that God is present and that he's praiseworthy. See, when all is unholy and everything's falling apart, we can run to the Holy One. And the Holy One is still our provider and he's our protector, but he's also present. And more than that, he's praiseworthy. Things get even darker. If we talk about being unholy and things just going nuts. So David's in this cave. There's this guy who was hanging out with the priests who wasn't an Israelite. His name is Doeg. Great name, eh? He's an Edomite. And the text says that he's a chief shepherd or a chief herdsman or of Saul's herdsmen. Now, it's a really weird word for chief there. And some people think that this guy was a mercenary. Most commentators think that he was captured from a battle with the Edomites and Saul kept him. The word for chief can also mean violent and obstinate. And he's standing there, and most scholars think that he was with the priests as in some kind of penance that he was having to pay. But Saul gets word that the priests in Nob helped David. And Saul flips his lid. He flips his lid. And Doeg is there, and he says, yeah, it's true. Ahimelech, the priest, helped David. He fed him. And Saul's like, that guy, that priest, he's conspiring against me. He's helping my enemy. Send for him. And so Ahimelech and his whole family come, and they sit in front of Saul. And Doeg's sitting right there, and it's like, you did this. And then Saul says, slaughter him and his whole family. Kill them all. And the people who are Israelites who are in Saul's court go, no. Like, Saul, we killed David, but we're not killing priests, and we're not killing their families. And Doeg goes, I'll do it. And the text says that Doeg not only kills the whole family of priests, he kills 85 priests. They actually go, and you can picture it in your mind. This plays out like a Braveheart movie. That they go, Doeg and his men, they go to the town of Nob. They kill all of the priests, 85 of them. They kill all of the livestock, all of the children, all of the women. They slaughter everybody. The text is so explicit in what they did that it's actually, the phraseology of it is the same phraseology that's used for holy war. Except this is the most unholy war you could ever imagine. For those first reading this would be shocking like nothing else. The king of Israel wants to kill all the priests of Israel, and all the people, like a holy war, kill everything in that whole town. His men won't do it, so a foreigner does it. God's people are now waging a holy war on themselves, and it's the most unholy thing ever. Where is God in that? You know, the end of chapter 22, verse 20 says, but one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Atub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. And David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life. With me you shall be in safekeeping. So one of these guys is spared. Now from the outside this looks horrendous, right? This is completely, utterly devastating. All the priests but one are left. The whole town is wiped out. What on earth is David thinking? And when stuff that just doesn't seem to make sense in our world, and it just seems so unjust and so unfair, where is God in all of that? What's going on? I just want to back up for a second and just say a few things. One, no matter what your worldview is, you got to deal with the problem of evil and suffering. Nobody gets off on this. Now, you could go the whole Middle Eastern religion idea, which is karma. So then you got to say, these people did something to deserve this. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sit right. Maybe sometimes, but often not. Or you could go the whole secular view and go, there's no reason for this. I don't know about you, but there's something inside of me that says, no. Because if there was no reason and it didn't really matter, then why does it bug me so much? Why are people crying? Why is there this crying out for justice? Why is there this recognition that this isn't okay? And this innate recognition that there is such a thing as okay, and we aren't there. Where does that come from? The Christian worldview would say that evil and suffering sometimes does hurt people that are innocent. That it isn't always because someone did something bad in a past life or in this life and they're getting what's for. That there's some things that are just wrong and evil and horrible. And unlike secularism or atheism, we would say, Christian worldview would say, no, there's meaning and there's purpose in this. We may not fully understand it, but God hasn't left us alone, and there is a purpose, and that God promises that he will make all things right. The Christian worldview answers that and says the reason why that upsets us, the reason why we have a bar, and even though we can never meet it, we know what unholy is. We know what evil is. And so David pens, and this is just a few words from a few different Psalms during this time. He says, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What could flesh do to me? I love this verse, man. If you don't know this verse, write this down. This is God's heart. You've kept count of my tossings. I love that. It could mean wandering. It can also literally mean tossings. You ever been so upset that you've puked? God's holding your hair back. You can tweet that. He's there. He put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? This I know, that God is for me. This man's writing this while in a cave. Here's something else he wrote. Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings, I will take refuge. Till the storms of destruction pass by, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. And then he worships. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. I highlighted these two things because we could hide and try to get our refuge. When things go unholy, we can run to a whole bunch of other things other than the Holy One, i.e. Netflix or a substance that we get addicted to or food or whatever it might be. But he goes, no, I run to you because you are the one who is in control of everything. And I love this. I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. The reality is that the Lord is working even in the hardest of times, that none of this escapes him, and that he is working it all for good. So the question is, when everything seems unholy, do we run to the Holy One? We run to the Holy One. You know, my brother is a cop, and he's up north right now, but he did a stint in Pembroke, Petawawa area. And one of his first summers, apparently the cool thing to do out in these rural towns is to have bush parties for teenagers and stuff. Does anybody, you know what I say when I say bush party? Now's the time to confess you're in church. All right, you've been to a bush party? I've been to one or two, okay? So it's okay. It's not okay, bush party, but we're confessing here, okay? The Lord knows. So Dave goes with his partner. They hear that one of these kids, he's about 17, who's got some priors and everything else, and he's wanted for arrest. He's out at this bush party. So my brother David and his partner go, and they park on the side road, and David has to trek into the forest to find this kid who's at this party. And his partner's waiting at the car in case the kid comes out another direction. Okay, so the partner pulls around to the other side. David goes in. He gets the kid about, we're talking a kilometer in. And he gets the kid and he puts him under arrest and he's handcuffed him. And they're walking through, you can picture it, they're walking through the bush in the dark. The kid's walking like this, okay, and David's behind him. And the kid all of a sudden says, I gotta go pee. Right, of course. And so David David helps him, and while he's relieving himself, he starts saying, "You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. Because I'm going to run." And he takes off with his pants half down, running through the bush. And David's chasing after him, tackling this kid in the mud and with his pants half down, everything else. And finally brings him out. And so David's telling me this story. And I'm going, oh my goodness. And I reflect on it. It's funny. You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. Because I'm going to run. There are times in life, like let's be honest, where we get caught for something, and this is the whole thing about perceiving our world that is unholy. And the unholy messes we find ourselves, if we reflect long enough, we realize that we're actually not outside of the unholiness. We're actually a part of it. G.K. Chesterton, who lived 100 years ago, wrote in England, there was a newspaper article, and they asked this question, what's wrong with the world? And he wrote back, this philosopher, he wrote back 2 words. He goes, I am. And see, the thing is when when we recognize that we're part of the unholiness, we're part of the mess. We've got our own stuff, and we hurt people, and we're selfish. We do all these things, and, there's memories of stuff that we've done and thoughts that we've had and all of that. And we could be there. It was just like, I want to run, I want to run, I want to run. You're going to shoot me because I'm going to run. And there's this desire of wanting to just escape myself, escape whatever. And running to the Holy One seems like the last thing you'd ever want to do because I'm not holy. Why would I run to the Holy One? David penned another psalm during all this time. It was Psalm 34. And there's this cool line that happens, and I've been teaching this all the way through, that David is a type or a picture of the king that would come through his line, a king named Jesus. And there's this phrase that happens. He says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Him, singular. He keeps all his bones, not one of them is broken. And theologians and the New Testament picks up on this and goes, he's talking about Jesus because the only one who's truly righteous is him. And you remember Jesus, they were going to break his legs, but they figured he was already dead, so instead they stabbed him. God protected the righteous one, even though all the afflictions came. And you say protected, he died. He gave himself willingly. He died and he rose again. The reason why we can run to the Holy One, even in all of our unholiness, is because he ran to us. And I love this. David then highlights this. He goes, the Lord redeems the life of his servants. He buys back. He rescues. None of those who take refuge in him will ever be condemned. I know the inclination when we see all the unholiness is to run. And when we see all the unholiness in us, that it's to run even more away. But Christianity says, no, run to the Holy One. And we can do that because of what Jesus did for us. It's interesting, Jesus actually, to close, and the band can come, Jesus actually references this story. He's talking about how hard life is in Matthew 11, and he says, follow me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. What he's saying is hook yourself to me. Life is hard, but you come and you follow me, and I'm not going to beat you down. I'm going to lift you up. And then it goes, and he's eating with his friends on the Sabbath. They're doing work. And the religious people get all upset. And Jesus references the story of David eating the bread. And it's really interesting. He says this thing in Matthew 12. He says this, he goes, there is something greater than the temple going on here. See, Jesus isn't just the new David. Jesus is the king of the Sabbath. He is the one who gives rest. He's the one who offers rest. And right after he says that, he goes and he heals a man on the Sabbath. See, in all of the unholiness and running to the Holy One, we take refuge and we find rest in him. Because he is the provider and he's the protector. He is present, he is with us, and he is worthy of our praise. So let's run to him. We're going to stand. We're going to close with this last song. And it's actually called All Stand, so it works out pretty well. Look, hey, you're participating. And if you want to chat more, stuff's going on. If you want to pray, if you just want to linger, that's totally cool. You know, one time out of the week for many of us, this is where we kind of stop and just reflect on things that are greater than ourselves. We could get so busy and stuff that's going on, getting the kids here, getting the kids there, paying this bill, getting that project done, that we could kind of get totally zoomed in or not realize. And then stuff like what happened on Monday just kind of shakes us back up to the reality that life is short and that there's evil in our world and there's things that don't make sense. But we're not alone. There's one who took all of the evil that evil could throw at him. And he did it out of love for you and for me. And he says, come, run to me and find rest. I'm here for you. Let's sing together.